Okay, good morning. So we're up to Siman Kuf Ayin Hey, Sif Base. We're halfway through the Brach of Hatov HaMeitiv on wine, on the second wine that is brought during the meal. The first wine you said Gofen, and then superior or better wine is now brought, and you make Hatov HaMeitiv. So further details of this halacha. It's a halacha base. Mevarchin Hatov HaMeitiv. You make the brach of Hatov HaMeitiv al kol shinu yain min hastam, on any change of wine, even stam. Afidu eni yodeh shasheni meshubach me'arishon. Even if you're not sure if the second wine is superior than the first one, you still make it. Kol she'eni yodeh shu gorua men. As long as you know that it's not worse, then you still make the bracha. Says the Ramav, Hagov ve'in chiluk bein shneim chadoshim. Doesn't make a difference if they're both new wine, younger wine, or echad chodesh ve'echad yoshen. One is young, one is old. Even if you're drinking within 30 days of its making. That if a person drank red wine to begin with, and then they bring you white wine, even though it's not as good as the first wine, why? Because white wine apparently is better for the body than red wine, and therefore that itself necessitates Hatov HaMeitiv. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Zayin, she'en yodeh shel gorua. You don't know that it's worse, avalim yodeh shel gorua, but if you know that the second wine is gorua, is inferior, afilu mat, even a little bit, lo yivarech alav af shehu min acher, you don't make a bracha on it, quoting the Achronim. Now, take a look at this footnote number 8, the second paragraph. This is something we mentioned briefly at the end last week, I think after we had the shir. This is this Minchas Yitzchak, very interesting. So long as it's not inferior. So says the note over here, V'yayin she'ena meshubach mitzad atzmai. Wine which is not superior inherently, it's sort of chemically enhanced. That's what gives it its superiority. Kosav v'shar shuvs minchas Yitzchak b'shem Torah Chaim she'ein levarich olav Hatov HaMeitiv k'sheshosim oisel la'achayayin pachas meshubach. You don't make a brach of Hatov HaMeitiv on wine which is superior. She'ein mevarchin ela al shinu yayin shemeshubach machmas atzmoi. You only make it if it's inherently better, but if it's artificially enhanced through all chemical or non-natural means, then that does not mean that it's better. Because you did something else to it. So how that works nowadays, I'm not entirely sure, because if the wines that are brought to the table, are they naturally better or they chemically enhanced? It's unclear. So according to this Minchas Yitzchak, there's a bit of a question mark, about the second wine. Does it justify making it on the cost? That could be it. Maybe. Okay. Ches sifkot and ches mimenu kosav ataz dafkim hu mistapik shemu gorua rak mimenu. If the guy is unsure if it's worse, but if you think it's a lot inferior, that it's such a schwach wine, you can just about drink it, you're not going to make Hatov HaMeitiv on that wine where you're really not even sure if you can even drink the thing. When you've got new wine and you've already made the Berach Gofen, you don't have to make a bracha again of Berach Gofen on the next wine. That you do have to make even if they're both new. Because once they bring from a second keli, that's considered like two different minim, which would require the second bracha. Okay. When you go from chodesh to yoshan, but if you go the other way around, from an old good wine to something which is a bit new and sort of cheap and young, then mistama you don't make the bracha. Unless you know that the new wine is taka as good as the older wine. Miman desvirelei dem shasa. I might have thought the wine which is so fresh, so new, is not really a quality wine, that it could be. That it's a little bit inferior. But if it's significantly inferior, then you do not make Hatov HaMeitiv. Because Yeah, because the white wine is going to be healthier for you. When we call Malcolm if you drink white wine first, and then they bring you red wine, even though the red wine which is brought subsequently is not as healthy, however, you do make Hatov HaMeitiv because it can be just a better wine. But generally speaking, the white wine is healthier, he says, and therefore red is going to be considered inferior to it. Okay, let's carry on. They bring him some bad wine, so they bring you 2 bottles of wine, one better, one worse. You make a ber pragofen on the best wine. That's just a rule in Hilchos Brachos. Make it on the best thing in front of you. Don't make the bracha on the inferior wine of ber pragofen, so that when you have a better wine, you then make the tova meitiv. Because the rule is, if you've got 2 bottles of wine in front of you, make it on the better wine, on the preferred, and therefore don't sort of get clever and say I'll make it on the inferior wine in order that I can make Hatov HaMeitiv, but rather just do what you've got to do, which is make it on the better wine. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotan Yudalad al Hatov. If you're not sure which is Tov and which is Ra, then lechatchila you just make ber pragofen on one of them, or birchas hatov al hasheni on the second one you make Hatov HaMeitiv. Even if they bring both wines at one go. But it's good if you're not sure in a situation of a sofig, just move one away from the table, and therefore you make a ber pragofen on the first one. And then when they bring you a second bottle of wine, you make Hatov HaMeitiv. And that takes away the chashashas, because if they're both out in front of you, then like we said last time as well, then it becomes a bit more confusing. So too, if you want to make a bracha on many wines, remove them from the table at the time of the bracha rishona. You can make more than one Hatov HaMeitiv in one meal. So if you have, it's a lot of wine going on there. So you have one wine, and then they bring you another bottle. You make Hatov HaMeitiv, and then another superior bottle. You keep, it's much from here that you keep on going. Busy meal. Okay, Dalet. Ein levarich Hatov HaMeitiv elim kein yesh acher imos. Another rule for Hatov HaMeitiv is you only make it if you are drinking with another person. Because that's the mashmos of the bracha. Hatov loy, it's good for you. V'hameitiv, and it's good lechavera for your friend. Duadin im ishta bonavim, and that also is true if your wife or children are there. That also counts. Avul imhu yechidi loy, but not if you're on your own. So if you're sitting there drinking, and a second you decide to open another bottle of superior wine, if you're on your own drinking, you do not make Hatov HaMeitiv. Says the Mishnah Berurah Tesvav imay. So you drink from the first wine. But if only you are drinking, or if only your friend is drinking, you've got to both be drinking to make the second bracha. There's got to be also a shutfus in the wine, that both are able to drink it. But if you are a guest, where the balabos is pouring you to drink, now, okay, we'll see in a second. Because I'm not going to Avram, even the balabais can't make it. Then have a kushutfus v'yochel esareach levarech. So, as if what it means is, if you've got the balabais who's pouring one glass of wine to his friend, and the balabais, the orach, the guest, does not feel comfortable to pour himself more wine, then you've got a problem. It's not going to be Hatov HaMeitiv. I think, I don't know exactly, 9 out of 10 cases, if you've got a guest, I think he feels comfortable to pour from his to take some. In that case, if he does feel comfortable, then it's considered a shutuf in the wine, and therefore they're considered 2 of them drinking together, and you can make Hatov HaMeitiv. But if the guest does not feel comfortable to take it, then he's not considered the shutuf in the wine, and it's as if the balabais is drinking by himself, which he can't make it. Okay. What about your wife and kids? They've got a chelik in the wine, and I think certainly my kids would feel very comfortable to pour themselves another glass of wine. So too, they can drink in one chabura, and they've got to be together, sitting at the same table, not in different rooms in the house. That both drink from both wines. But if both drink from the first wine, and only one drinks from the second, or vice versa, one drinks from the first and both drink from the second wine, ein levarech. Both have got to drink from both. If you forgot to make the bracha and the wine is already in your mouth, you can swallow it and make the bracha vatov ametiv afterwards. But if you only remember after you've already finished drinking, then you no longer make the bracha. However, if there is still more wine in the bottle, then everyone agrees you can make the bracha. Because like we've said previously, if you forget to make hamotzi and you're in the middle of the suda still, then you can still make hamotzi, it's still covered. Okay, let's just finish off the siman. Sif hey, imrabim mesubim besuda. You've got a lot of people there at the meal. Kol echad mevarech la'atzma hatova metiv. Each person makes themselves hatova metiv. V'lo yavarech echad lekulam. Not one person for everyone. Why? For similar reasons we've said previously. Because when a lot of people are eating or drinking together and one person makes the bracha, people will respond amen, and that could be dangerous in a situation where people are eating or drinking, because you shouldn't be talking when you're eating and drinking, and the concern is that the food or the drink will go down the windpipe, which could be dangerous. So therefore, better that each person makes their own bracha, so they'll make it when they're not actually eating or drinking. Says the Ramah, if they're just drinking, then one person can make it for everyone, because the concern is more with food rather than with drink. Okay, no Mishnah brought on that, so let's just finish Vav. Yain shal shtei chovyas. You've got wine of two different barrels. V'hakol min echod, but it's the same wine, it's the same vintage, right? Whatever it may be, but they're just two separate barrels. Im b'teich aboyim yom lebsirosei samu b'shnei kelim. If it was within the 40 days of making of this wine, they put them in two different barrels. It's considered two separate minim. And you finish the first one, and then they bring from the second one, then you make hatov ametiv. But if they divided the wine after 40 days of the making of this wine, that's just the same wine. And therefore, even though it's in two different barrels, since they divided it after 40 days, it's considered one wine, and therefore you would not make hatov ametiv there. Okay, Tesvav says in Mishnah Berurah, Chashivi kashnei minim, the kivin shekol echot hayotesis bechavis b'deatzma. Each one is sort of fermenting in its own barrel. B'shir zman zeh adayin chodoshu v'yochel yishtanis kol echot b'tama. Each one can sort of go a different way and could sort of have its own different time, its own flavor. Masha'en kein achar boim yom. But after 40 days, where you split the wine into two barrels, hu bichlal yain yoshin ve'ein mishtaneh tamo, then at this point you're not going to change the tam, the taste of the wine. Umin echot hu ve'ein ze bichlal shinu yain. Okay, that's the end of hatov v'hametiv. Yeah.
Note 12 brings down whether about drinking wine after grape juice.
Yeah, let's have a look. Well, legabe mitzah novim, note 12. Kosav b'shar shuvas olet zion. She'ein mevorchin of hatov v'hametiv. Paul, this is what I think you were talking about. So if you have grape juice, let's say for Kiddush, and then you have an extra wine, then you don't make hatov v'hametiv on the second wine. Kivin she'ein choshev ve'ein mesameach. Because the first one is not considered, it hasn't got enough chashivas in the first one. V'chein d'asagonu b'lyashuv. Legabe shtias yain la'achar mitzah novim. Me'idach hagonim nissim karelitz, v'hagonim Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg, v'hagonim Yaakov Fisher, shemevorchem hatov v'hametiv al shtias yain. You do. Yain la'achar mitzah novim. Yeah, so you got two different opinions. The poskim debate if you have wine after grape juice, whether you make hatov v'hametiv on that. Okay, the Seder.